Zero-carb, aka carnivore, is an approach a lot of people are trying these days for various reasons, including losing weight, autoimmune disorders, and so on. But the question today is carnivore good for type 1 diabetes? Now, I've been doing a carnivore approach myself now for over half a year, and in doing so, I've learned a lot about it. I've learned about what it takes to do a carnivore approach as a diabetic. I've learned about the pros and cons, and today we're going to go over all of that. Let's start with the pros. The pro of a carnivore slash zero carb approach, and by the way, you can be as strict or relaxed with it as you want. I do eat vegetables and berries on the side very occasionally, but in general, I'm eating mostly meat, cheese, dairy, eggs, bacon, so on. A pro of the carnivore diet for type 1 diabetes is that it is very easy to keep things consistent. And that is because your options are so limited. Because you can either eat meat, or meat, or meat, there's only so many things you can do. And while that may seem daunting to some people, if you like that food, then it's not a bad deal at all. It's actually important to keep things consistent anyways, and doing a carnivore approach makes it even simpler to get all the nutrients you need while keeping your meals consistent throughout the day, throughout the week, and so on. And when you keep things consistent, it's easier to find better blood sugars because you know exactly what to bolus, you got less variables when you're trying to experiment, and so on. So being able to keep things consistent very easily is a big pro of the carnivore diet. Now, a big con, of course, goes back to that lack of variety. If you want variety in your life, if you like to have a so-called balanced meal with a colorful plate with green veggies and meat and so on, you might have a rough time here because, again, your options are limited. If you like meat, and you can find dishes that you can enjoy again and again and again, like I have, then you'll be fine. But if you need variety in your life, you're going to have a tough time. That said, I've heard from a lot of people that once they go carnivore, they don't really need as much variety anymore. And they can still keep things somewhat varied. So you can have fish some days, beef some days, chicken some days, bacon some days, and so on. They can mix and match it here and there and still have some variety, but not nearly as much as you would on a basic low-carb approach. Another pro about carnivore is that my basal needs have actually went down significantly. I think I might be a lot more insulin sensitive now than I used to be. And that makes sense because people often lose weight very fast on a carnivore diet, maybe even faster than a normal ketogenic diet. And that could be because they're becoming much more insulin sensitive. And, less insulin means more weight loss and so on if you're trying to lose weight. But alternatively, a con is that while I'm using less basal insulin, I'm actually using more R insulin. And when we talk about how to do a carnivore approach, I'll get into that. In fact, let's talk about that now. Now we've gone through a few pros and cons. To do a carnivore approach to type 1 diabetes, you'll have to change a few things up. It actually does work a little differently than just general low carb. When you cut out the carbs completely, it's almost like you're going keto over again. Your basal needs are going to change, so you're going to have to test constantly and adjust those rates accordingly. You're going to be eating a lot more protein in one sitting. People generally on a carnivore approach will eat maybe half a pound of meat or so in one sitting. That's going to be a lot of protein. Now, there are ways to do carnivore where it's limited protein and high amount of fat, such as the Paleolithic ketogenic approach that some of the people I've interviewed have done. But carnivore in general doesn't really have that kind of limit, per se. You're supposed to eat fatty meat, of course, but a lot of people still just eat muscle meat, and that's what I'm basically doing. I eat beef, I eat steak, I eat sushi, I eat whatever. Anyways, because you're eating a lot of protein at once, you need to take more R. And not only are you going to need to take more R when you eat the meal, but that protein is going to linger longer. So what you might need to do is actually split your bolus. And that means taking your R insulin before you eat, and then taking it again a few hours later. Right now, for example, what I'm doing, just for a half a pound of beef meal, is I take 2 units of R about 10 to 15 minutes before I eat. And then 2 hours after that first dose, I take another 2 units. If I didn't take that next 2 units, my blood sugar would rise after those 2 hours. But when I split that bolus, I'm able to actually keep a pretty solid line very well. Again, partly because I'm able to keep things so consistent and learn exactly what works for me. So keep that in mind. You might need to take more insulin. You might need to split that bolus as well. And of course, you might need to change your basal insulin. Now, as far as type 1 diabetes goes, other than that, it's a little bit trial and error. This is a fairly new phenomenon, the zero-carb / carnivore approach. It's not even something that Bernstein has talked much about. So if you try it, it's going to be a little bit experimental. But follow along. I'm going to keep doing it myself. And, if you have anything you'd like to add as far as type 1 diabetes and carnivore goes, comment below and I'll make another video about it. Now, when it comes to carnivore outside of diabetes, there are other things that can happen, and there are plenty of experts that talk all about this, including people like Sean Baker, Dr. Ken Berry, Paul Saladino, Frank Tufano. A lot of other people are talking about the carnivore diet and talking about the other things that could happen. But as far as type 1 goes, the main things are the changing basal rates, the changing bolus needs, and having to perhaps split your bolus dose in order to take care of the longer rise from the higher amount of protein in one sitting. Now, some people take care of that by just eating more frequently, but that sounds inconvenient to me. I'd rather eat just twice a day. That's how it works for me. Again, if you have anything else you'd like to add as far as type 1 diabetes and carnivore goes, if you have experience with yourself, comment below. I love to learn more about this and have suggestions on what to talk about next time. Until then, be sure to keep taming that type 1 where you're 0 carb or 30 carbs a day, and hopefully we can all find a way to have great normal blood sugars.